Hello again guys, and welcome back to another Big Al Devlin video here at the House of Devlin, and this is a continuation of our Norse gods series, and this particular video focuses on one of my favourite gods, the god that is called Heimdall. Now Heimdall was a member of the Aesir tribe, and just like any other god that is a member of the Aesir tribe, he was in fact a son of Odin. This is not by any means unusual. Most of the Aesir tribe are populated by Odin's sons, but what is unusual about his heritage is his mother, or should I say mothers, for he had 9 mothers. Now, whether that's possible or not, obviously, well, of course it is. Heimdall was born of 9 mothers. The significance of that, I'm not really that sure of, other than the fact that 9, the number 9 within Nordic paganism, is a very sort of significant number. You could almost describe it as a holy number if you wish. For example, Odin hangs himself for 9 days and 9 nights, and you know, there's a whole host of other stories where the number 9, the 9 realms, for example, that form the cosmos, there's a whole host of other stories out there that where the number 9 keeps coming up. So the fact that he's got 9 mothers shows that there must be some significance to that. Now, who are his mothers? Well, again, this is up for speculation. We do know the names of his mothers. I'm not going to go through them, but the names of his mothers are kind of unimportant. It's really a who they are, and it's believed by many that his mothers are in fact the children, the daughters of Aegir and Ran, the king and queen of the sea. They had 9 daughters, and it just kind of makes sense. The only problem is their names, which we know, do not match in any way whatsoever the 9 names that are known to be the mothers of Heimdall. So it kind of puts a bit of a dampener on that theory. But of course, a lot of the gods do have multiple names that they're known by. You know, when you've lived for so long and you're so powerful, each culture, each person may call you by a different name or know you as a different name, like Grimnir, for example, for Odin, or Woden for Odin, and things like this, for example. So having multiple names as a god is not by any means unusual, and so of course they could be the 9 daughters of Ran and Aegis, but we don't know. But it's an interesting fact about Heimdall. He actually comes from 9 mothers. He's the only god actually that I know that comes from more than one mother. The only other god that I know that actually has a kind of weirdness regards his origins, at least at the moment anyway, that I know about, is Loki. And Loki comes from a mother of unknown origins, and that's not that unusual as such. Just, you could say, well, the knowledge was lost over time, but it's not. There have been references to Loki's inheritance, where he comes from, and whose father is, and that. But for some reason, the stories, the Eddas, the poems that tell you the knowledge that we have about Nordic paganism, all try to avoid at their very strongly the discussion of who Loki's mother was. And it was my theory, of course, as a result, that because Loki is so important in the story, or in the stories and the flow of destiny within Nordic paganism, that he is in fact the son of a Norn, or maybe all of the Norns. He is a product of the Norns. And that's my theory, and it would explain why he is so linked in with Ragnarok, which is essentially the most ultimate, most unavoidable destiny out there. But that's enough of Loki for the time being, because of course we are talking about Heimdall, but Loki will come into the story later on. Heimdall was a god unlike any other. He was a born sentry. In many respects, Thor had his strength, Odin had his wisdom, and Heimdall had his skill at arms. I mean, he was of the Aesir tribe. All the sons of Odin could fight, every single one was versed with spear, with sword, with axe and shield, you know, and he was no exception. In fact, he was one of the greater of the sons regards his martial capabilities. He'd have to be what he was, which was the guard and the sentinel of Asgard. But what set him apart from the other gods, like Thor with his strength, for example, and as I say, Odin with his wisdom, was his senses, his abilities to see things and hear things that the other gods could not. And so he resided within the highest perch within Asgard, and built upon it a fortress called the Sky Fortress. And he lived there, and at the Sky Fortress you found the Bifrost. Now, of course, we all know what the Bifrost is. The Bifrost, or the Bifrost as you may sometimes hear it pronounced, was the Rainbow Bridge, essentially. It was a spiritual connection between Asgard and Midgard. It allowed the gods, but it also allowed essentially the souls of men to travel to Asgard via, as I say, this ultimate connection, and it was the very specific role of Heimdall to protect the Bifrost at the entrance of Asgard, because of course if any creature could gain access to Midgard ultimately and then use that to get to the Bifrost to then attack Asgard. And of course it was known when Odin traded his right eye for ultimate wisdom, the ultimate foresight, if you wish, where he could see almost every sort of flow of fate possible, and he could see the future, he could see his own death, he could see his own destiny and the destiny of everyone around him. It's obvious really that, you know, with that obviously you're going to want it. They knew that Ragnarok would begin when the forces of destruction came to the Bifrost, because that signifies when Ragnarok comes to Asgard. Okay, Ragnarok is a progressive storyline. It starts in Midgard, and we see the destruction of Earth and the human race and all of the living creatures and plant life and everything like this. And even Ymir's corpse itself literally dies. It is ultimately fully destroyed. The lands and the sky and all go crashing into the seas. And that signifies the end of Ragnarok, when Midgard is destroyed, because shortly after that, of course, Asgard is also fully destroyed. But it is via the Bifrost that the fire giants of Muspelheim attack Asgard. It's through the Bifrost that they gain access, and of course, as a result, all the Aesir gods know the sound, but fear hearing the sound at least, of the great horn of Heimdall. Heimdall was gifted a great horn, which when he would only blow upon when Ragnarok had reached Asgard. And that, of course, is, as I say, when the fire giants attack Asgard via the Bifrost. Now, as I say, I've kind of gone off track there a little bit, but it's to give you sort of why he has these senses. Or not, maybe not why, but why he chose to have these senses. Because although he was born with great sight, his sense of hearing was gained just in much the same way that Odin's foresight ability, his ultimate wisdom, if you wish, was gained when he sacrificed his right eye so that he could see the strands of fate, he could see the future. Heimdall sacrificed, it is believed, one of his ears, and his ear resides in the same place as Odin's eye within Yggdrasil, at the basin of Yggdrasil. And for this trade of his ear, he gained the ultimate ability to hear, ultimately. So even though he could see hundreds and hundreds of miles, be it day or night. That's a feat in its own respect. If you could hide from his line of sight, ultimately you could possibly sneak up upon Heimdall. It'd be very hard, but you could do it in theory, or if you came from behind him, for example. But his hearing made it impossible for you to get past Heimdall. Heimdall was the ultimate sentry. You could not. He was an unpassable object, and that was the whole point. He would hold the fortress at the bridge of Bifrost, and he would hold it right to the end, to his death if needs be, and only let pass those that Odin, of course, allowed. Now, his sense of hearing was so good, it's actually described exactly how good it was. He could hear in Midgard, the material realm, another realm outside of Asgard. Essentially, it's like almost hearing into another galaxy, if you wish, almost. Okay, he could hear the grass grow from the ground, and he could hear the wool grow off the sheep that were grazing on that grass. His hearing was literally unbelievable. It was unparalleled, and as I say, it allowed him to be aware of everything and everyone who approached Asgard long before they were anywhere near its borders. And so that's what made him the perfect sentry, the perfect guard. That, and of course the fact that he was very loyal, very dutiful, and ever vigilant. He had the personality that you would want for the perfect guard. Beyond that, however, we then discuss, of course, the end of Heimdall, as we must do with almost every god. All the gods virtually come to death during Ragnarok, and Heimdall is unfortunately no exception. He is one of the Aesir that do die in battle against the forces of destruction. However, he dies really, as I say, towards the end of Ragnarok. He dies when Midgard literally has been destroyed, when the lands and the sky sink into the sea. As they do this, he, during the battle, finds himself all of a sudden in combat with Loki. Loki, the trickster god, who is the general of the forces of destruction. Now, Loki himself is a competent fighter and is very skilled with the spear. This is well known. And so he makes swift and agile strikes at Heimdall. But Heimdall was particularly good with the sword and would deflect the attacks that, of course, Loki would try to land upon him. And the odd blow that got through the guard of Heimdall, which would be very few indeed, would be absorbed by his armor, which was very thick, as you would expect, of course, for a guard, and the guard of Asgard at that. However, after a while, of course, both gods were fully determined to destroy one another, and that's exactly what they got. Much like the story of Thor versus Jormungand, both gods were equally matched, and as a result, both gods were their own destruction. Heimdall delivered a fatal blow to Loki, but Loki also at the same time delivered fatal enough damage to Heimdall for him to also die. However, this is a pivotal role within Ragnarok. Loki, the general of the forces of destruction, is killed, but also one of the finest of the Aesir gods is also lost. And it truly spells out the beginning of the true end for Asgard and for all of creation. Heimdall is one of my favourite gods. Not because of his martial abilities, not because of his supernatural senses or anything like along these lines, but because of his patience, because of his perfect personality to be a god. He sits in the Sky Fortress and just watches and never stops watching. He's ever vigilant. And this sense of duty that he has is something that I admire. As someone bound to Folkvanger, as bound to be a guardian of Freya when eventually I die and, you know, go to the afterlife, I see him as a role model more than anything, and hope to be as close to him as I can regards my own abilities. Thank you for watching this, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. This is the Norse god Heimdall, and I hope you enjoyed the story. Thank you.